Poilievre challenges Liberal policies in surprise speech. Mark Carney responds, economic outlook ***. In a recent surprise speech, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took aim at the Liberal government's policies under Prime Minister Mark Carney, particularly focusing on the pressing housing crisis that has gripped Canada. Poilievre's critique centered on Carney's controversial appointment of Gregor Robertson, the former mayor of Vancouver, as the new Minister of Housing. During his tenure, Robertson oversaw a staggering 179% increase in home prices, which raised immediate concerns about his ability to effectively tackle the affordability crisis that many Canadians are currently facing. This dramatic rise in housing costs has made Vancouver one of the most expensive markets in the world, prompting Poilievre to question the logic behind such an appointment. In his speech, he posed a critical question: how could someone whose policies contributed to soaring prices be trusted to bring about meaningful change? The irony of appointing a figure associated with skyrocketing costs to a role aimed at lowering them did not go unnoticed, and it became a focal point of Poilievre's argument against the Liberal government. Carney responded to Poilievre's challenge by defending Robertson's experience, arguing that British Columbia's housing policies could serve as a model for a national strategy. He emphasized the need to increase housing supply as a fundamental solution to the crisis. However, this argument is undermined by the reality that British Columbia itself continues to grapple with some of the highest housing costs in the world. Critics have pointed out that relying on Robertson's track record raises doubts about whether these policies can be successfully implemented on a national scale, given the province's ongoing struggles with affordability. In addition to questioning Robertson's appointment, Poilievre also scrutinized Carney's broader economic approach. During the press conference, Carney claimed that Canadians would measure the government's success based on their experiences with everyday expenses, such as grocery bills, utility costs, and housing prices. However, many observers found this response vague and lacking in concrete measures or benchmarks to track progress. This ambiguity has left the public wondering how the government plans to effectively address the rising cost of living, particularly in relation to housing affordability. While Carney mentioned job creation and economic growth as potential solutions to the affordability crisis, the connection to housing remains tenuous at best. Many Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, and the government's focus on general economic indicators does not adequately address the specific challenges of the housing market. This disconnection between policy intentions and the lived realities of citizens has fueled skepticism about Carney's ability to deliver on his promises. In a bold announcement, Carney stated that his government aims to implement a middle-class tax cut by July 1st. However, given the complexities of the legislative process, this timeline appears overly ambitious. The passage of budget implementation bills typically involves multiple stages, including readings, debates, and committee studies. Such a significant policy change is unlikely to be enacted in such a short timeframe, raising questions about the feasibility of Carney's timeline and the government's overall planning capacity. Furthermore, even if the tax cut is approved, the prospect of retroactive adjustments poses significant administrative challenges. These complexities could hinder the government's ability to manage this policy effectively, potentially leading to confusion and frustration among taxpayers. Critics have pointed out that without a clear and realistic timeline, the promise of a tax cut may simply serve as a political talking point rather than a tangible benefit for Canadians. Another critical issue raised during the press conference was Carney's government's attempts to recruit MPs from the New Democratic Party, NDP. When asked about this strategy, Carney provided a vague response, expressing a desire to work with opposition members, but failing to directly address the question of party loyalty. This lack of transparency has led to concerns about the integrity of such tactics, especially if it involves offering cabinet positions to NDP members in exchange for their support. Critics argue that such actions could be perceived as political bribery, further eroding public trust in the government. The overall criticism of Carney's approach highlights a growing lack of confidence in his policies and appointments. The choice of Gregor Robertson as housing minister raises serious doubts about the government's commitment to effectively address the housing crisis. Critics argue that the government's plans appear to lack clear, measurable targets and realistic timelines for achieving affordability. Instead, the focus seems to be on general economic growth and job creation, which, while important, do not directly address the specific challenges facing the housing market. As the political landscape evolves, the stakes are high for both Carney and Poilievre. With rising public discontent and a lack of clear solutions emerging from the Liberal government, the upcoming months will be critical for both leaders. Carney's ability to regain public trust will depend on his administration's willingness to engage in open dialogue about fiscal policies and housing affordability. Meanwhile, Poilievre's aggressive opposition strategy may resonate with voters who are looking for a clear alternative to the current government. In conclusion, the ongoing debate regarding housing affordability and economic management in Canada is intensifying, with Poilievre challenging Carney's policies and the appointment of Robertson raising significant questions about the government's approach. The future direction of Canada's economic landscape remains uncertain. As both leaders prepare for a critical electoral battle, the stakes are high, and Canadians are left wondering who will ultimately deliver the solutions they need to address the pressing issues of affordability and economic stability in their daily lives.